Dongguans' 8-day consecutive nucleic acid testing sparks panic among residents. Why is the CCP still obsessed with COVID-19 despite its decline worldwide? Chinese students abroad fear return home as new anti-spy law takes effect on July 1st. CCP plans to establish Overseas Chinese Affairs Law, expert, deceiving overseas Chinese for political gain. CCP blocks discussions on poverty and manipulates data in secret, expert, the economy is so bad that it is unimaginable. It's all covered in today's China Truths. Dongguans' 8-day consecutive nucleic acid testing sparks panic among residents. Recently, there have been several reports of a COVID-19 resurgence in various parts of mainland China. On the evening of May 5, Dongqing Street in Dongguan, Guangdong Province, issued a notice on its official WeChat account regarding the arrangement of nucleic acid testing within 8 days, from May 6 to 13. The notice also stated that the cost for individual testing will not exceed 13.5 yuan, about $1.95. After the notice was released, it caused panic among the public, who feared the return of mandatory nucleic acid testing and even the return of lockdowns. Some netizens said, "I thought it was last year's news, but it was just released yesterday. The WHO has declared this matter over. Aren't you afraid of getting infected while doing the nucleic acid test? Why should normal people go for the test? Is it to harm others that only abnormal people go for the test?" After the notice made the top of the trending list and was bombarded with criticism, the Dongqing Street office pinned a message in the comments section of the article on May 6, saying, "Don't panic, this is a routine nucleic acid testing service provided by Dongqing, and citizens with testing needs can go to the designated hospital listed in the article for sampling." According to Day Daily, the Dongqing Street Health Bureau stated that this nucleic acid testing is voluntary and not mandatory, and is being carried out to meet the needs of the public in accordance with relevant regulations. As previously reported, just after the May Day holiday, some mainland Chinese citizens took to the internet to report that they had contracted the virus. Topics such as tested positive even made it to the top of Weibo's trending list. In fact, according to the Chinese edition of the Epoch Times, there have been reports of a resurgence of COVID-19 infections in various parts of mainland China since April. Several netizens have posted photos of themselves with 2 lines on the rapid screening test on the internet, claiming that they have been infected with COVID-19 for the second time, and some even saying that their entire family has tested positive again. They are worried about whether the next wave of the epidemic will come back to China. It's worth noting that the World Health Organization declared on May 5 that COVID-19 is no longer considered a public health emergency of international concern. So with the recent announcement of conducting 8 consecutive days of nucleic acid testing from Dongqing Street in Dongguan, many people in mainland China are questioning the decision. Some netizens even commented on a news article on Tushio, sarcastically saying, "Anything we oppose, they will do." Many are questioning whether the motive behind this move is simply to clear out expired stockpiles from suppliers. Expert, China enters an era of red terror. The Chinese Communist Party's revised anti-spy law will come into effect on July 1. It has caused a huge response both domestically and internationally. The new law broadens the interpretation of espionage activities to include joining spy organizations and carrying out cyber attacks against national security facilities. Chinese human rights lawyer Wu Xiaoping has pointed out that the definition of the crime of espionage under the new law is ambiguous, and many political terms that are not legal terms have been used in legislative documents. This greatly expands its scope of application. The definition of espionage activities has also been significantly broadened. For example, external institutions, diplomatic institutions, and overseas individuals are all included in the scope of the so-called anti-spy law. Wu said that this means that all foreign institutions and individuals can be treated as spies, and the new law becomes a pocket crime that the CCP can interpret as it pleases. This is very frightening because it means that anyone who has contact with foreigners, such as foreign organizations, diplomatic personnel, and overseas Chinese, could be considered a spy. Even having a cup of tea with personnel from overseas organizations or diplomats, and engaging in small talk, could be seen as a violation of the anti-spy law, leading to a situation where people are afraid to speak out and their movements are restricted. The new law requires citizens and organizations to report suspected espionage activities, and expands the definition of espionage to include documents, data, information, and items related to the security and interests of other countries. According to Wu, all power is in the hands of the CCP, and it can decide whether something is a spy device or not. For example, some human rights defenders who want to collect evidence against corrupt officials or those who violate the law and discipline may be arrested for possessing or using spy devices. Media personnel, market researchers, and foreign company employees are also at high risk. Wu Xiaoping said that lawyers collecting evidence in cases, international organizations investigating the situation and human rights conditions in Chinese society, and even Chinese citizens working for foreign companies may all accidentally be charged with espionage by the CCP. He said, this revision means that China has completely entered a red terror era. After years of suppressing domestic society, it has slowly shifted its focus to the outside and created a legal system related to so-called national security, including the anti-spy law, secrecy law, national security law, criminal law, and criminal procedure law. The provisions contained within these laws constitute a legal system for CCP national security, which amounts to a series of laws for red terror. Wu Xiaoping believes that the CCP is attempting to use this law to control people all over the world, and those who are anti-CCP overseas are also in danger. Given China's current economic recession, the rapid withdrawal of foreign capital, and social turmoil caused by high unemployment, the enactment of the anti-spy law has only added to the chaos. The question remains, isn't the Chinese government concerned about this? Chen Chuangchuan, the executive director of the National Committee of the Chinese Democratic Party, said, the biggest characteristic of Xi Jinping's rise to power is that he places security above so-called development. In other words, what's the point of having good economic development and high living standards if my rule is unstable? If your efforts to make money are detrimental to my security and rule, what should I do? That's why he's adopting these strategies. The reason the Communist Party is so crazy right now is that it's not afraid. It believes that Western enterprises and those who want to make money still value the Chinese market. The street stall economy, the straw that saved the Chinese economy? To boost the economy and alleviate the unemployment crisis, the CCP has been continuously promoting the street vendor economy, allowing the opening of roadside stalls in major cities. Following Beijing, Shanghai, and Hangzhou, Shenzhen also plans to no longer fully ban roadside stalls starting this September. On May 4th, this topic became a hot search trend. However, many people question whether this hype around the street vendor economy promoted by official media outlets can really solve the fundamental employment problems of young people. 3 years ago, when Li Keqiang was the premier of the State Council, he proposed the street vendor economy and described it as the fireworks of life. However, this idea was cold-shouldered and ridiculed by official media outlets at the time. Subsequently, the 3-year clearing campaign has severely hit the Chinese economy, and employment has continued to deteriorate. By the time Li Keqiang became premier, the street stall economy had become a life-saving straw. Senior commentator Tang Jingyuan stated, the essence of the street vendor economy is just a way for urban populations to maintain the bottom line of survival. It is actually a form of marginal economy, especially in China, a country that has strict regulations or even bans on street vending. Restarting the street vendor economy means that the overall economic situation of society has actually collapsed. According to official data from the CCP, the current overall unemployment rate in China is 5.3%, but the unemployment rate for young people aged 16 to 24 has skyrocketed to 19.6%, which means that 1 out of every 5 young people is unemployed. Tang Jingyuan explained, a large number of unemployed people have seriously affected the stability of society, forcing the authorities to put aside their face and allow the unemployed to set up stalls. The street vendor economy is actually the most primitive stage of a market economy, and its transactions are entirely determined by supply and demand. There are basically no government factors involved in planning and operation. Therefore, Li Chang is now restarting the street vendor economy partly because he faces enormous pressure on population employment, and partly because the increasingly strict economic controls have caused partial ischemic necrosis in many areas, forcing him to temporarily loosen the restrictions to alleviate the crisis. The fundamental reason for the massive economic downturn in the Chinese Communist Party's economy is due to significant errors in political decision-making that have led to the interruption of economic activities caused by mandatory political intervention. If the direction of these political decisions is not changed, it is simply foolish to think that relying solely on street vendors' economy can stimulate consumption throughout society. It cannot even be considered a band-aid solution. At best, it is like putting a plaster on a sore to hide the ugliness. CCP plans to establish an overseas Chinese affairs law, expert, deceiving overseas Chinese for political gain. On April 24, the Chinese State Council proposed the expedited development of a so-called Overseas Chinese Rights Protection Law in a report submitted to the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress. The report called for continued efforts to attract investment from overseas Chinese and for the provision of preferential policies and streamlined services to attract high-level overseas Chinese talent to return to China to start businesses. Experts suggest that China's motivation for drafting this law is not genuinely to protect the rights of overseas Chinese, but rather to entice them back to China for investment. However, Chinese human rights lawyer Wu Xiaoping has pointed out that there is a bigger picture, which is that the CCP's economy is facing serious problems. According to Li Jianping, an international lawmaster from the China University of Political Science and Law, the laws related to protecting the rights and interests of overseas Chinese, whether by enacting new laws or amending existing ones, are actually a smokescreen. China's authoritarian regime is currently facing internal and external troubles, and its aggressive expansion abroad has led to global vigilance and strategic containment, economic decoupling, restructuring of industrial and supply chains, and dealt a huge blow to the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, causing a rapid economic downturn. Commentators believe that in this situation, the CCP is looking at the pockets of Chinese people and overseas Chinese around the world. Wu Xiaoping said, if these Chinese businessmen invest back in the CCP, they will definitely be taken advantage of. The CCP says nice things, but does terrible things. When it needs you today, it will promise you anything, but the day it doesn't need you, it could take measures to confiscate your assets in China and seize your assets. Because a lot of this has already happened. In April, the United States destroyed CCP overseas police stations, and many countries followed suit, dealing a heavy blow to the CCP's Overseas United Front. The CCP's attempt to formulate overseas Chinese affairs legislation is also seen as an attempt to woo Chinese and overseas Chinese under the guise of protecting them. In addition, that law is also seen as an empty promise. For example, when there was a military conflict in Sudan on April 15, countries evacuated their citizens, but the CCP's evacuation was much slower. When the Ukraine-Russia conflict broke out last year, the CCP's evacuation was also very slow, causing panic among Chinese people and students studying in Ukraine. CCP blocks discussions on poverty and manipulates data in secret, expert, the economy is so bad that it is unimaginable. According to a report in the New York Times on May 4, the Chinese Communist Party aims to achieve common prosperity by using poverty alleviation to showcase the legitimacy of its regime. However, with the economy becoming increasingly bleak and a severe lack of social security, people's anxiety is rising, and the CCP has decided to prevent any discussion of poverty, making it appear as if there are no poor people on the internet. According to Huang Qinglong, the chairman of the Cross-Strait Research Association, China's current situation is called a state of disorderly and dangerous countries. The current Chinese communist regime is confused. On the one hand, the CCP wants to attract foreign investment and private businesses, but on the other hand, it is pushing for laws and regulations that double the restrictions on leaving the country and scare away foreign investment. Ironically, large numbers of Chinese people are risking their lives to smuggle themselves into the United States, which the CCP describes as deep water and hot fire. In addition, the Wall Street Journal recently reported that the CCP has limited or cut off access to various databases in China from overseas in recent months. According to Ming Chucheng, a professor emeritus of the Department of Political Science at National Taiwan University, the Chinese government has systematically falsified data for many years, which often does not match up, yet it still wants to create an information black box to show that the economic problem is severe. In April, the All-China Federation of Trade Unions reported that the total number of workers in China is about 402 million, with 84 million in so-called new employment forms such as delivery, express, and online ride-hailing drivers, and 293 million migrant workers. Ming said, "The economy is so bad that it is unimaginable. If 1/5 of the employed population, the so-called new employment patterns, has to work as delivery drivers, including those with college or even graduate degrees, it indicates how bad the economy has become." The Chinese government has created a black box because they are afraid that you will see the truth that their economy has begun to contract significantly and enter a period of deflation. If the economy continues to decline, the risks in the financial system may eventually explode. Yes. Economic data in Zhejiang and Jiangsu provinces in the Yangtze River Delta region have continued to decline. Following the example of Beijing and Shanghai, Shenzhen has also started opening street vending economies. According to a report in Taiwan's Business Weekly, the wave of layoffs has been hidden, and about 1/3 of Taiwanese businessmen have left their main bases in Suzhou and Kunshan, with the remaining factories also losing their production capacity. Don't forget to comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths.